welcome to this very fancy, very special. Oh my God, I seriously can't even believe this is happening. Like, how did we get here? 100th episode. Oh my God. Seriously, of the Ready Yet podcast. I still, as I've said to you several times in the last 6 months, as all the stuff that we've been doing has really been coming to fruition the last several months. A lot of this, and this included, feels like that Talking Heads song. How did I get here? How did we get here? So seriously though, let's share with people. And I don't know that we've told this story before. A little bit of background about you and me. We work together in corporate. So you're used to me more than most people. It's been over 20 years that you've watched me do all sorts of things. So you're not terribly surprised. But I remember it was summer of 2020, right?
Yep.
And hey, so I have this idea, and it really came up because of the pandemic, when all my speaking gigs got canceled and they weren't all yet back on, and we hadn't figured out completely how to do virtual speaking, which is now no big deal because it's totally a thing. But it was like, all right, how do we grow our audience? And so I was like, oh, I could guest on podcasts. And then me and my delusions of grandeur. Why don't we just have a podcast?
Yeah. I almost appreciated it more because the task at first was, hey, let's find podcasts to get booked on. And that alone is so overwhelming because there's so many out there, and, some kind of aligned with you, but not a lot. And so when you kind of switch gears and we're like, hey, I'm just going to start one, I was like, yes, awesome.
This might, God only knows how, but this might actually be easier. Yeah. And so the first thing we did was I watched some webinars on having a podcast, and everything was talking about the technology. And what not everybody might realize is I have infinite patience for dog rescue. I have infinite patience for wildlife rescue and animals that don't cooperate. I have infinite patience for human beings who are scared and trying things anyway and having a hard time and not know what to do. I have zero patience for technology that I don't know how to use.
Less than zero.
Less than zero. And this is not new. I will fully claim this is not an age-related problem for me, because I never learned how to record on a VCR. I never learned how to set a timer on a DVR. This is not a new problem for me. Okay. Just saying. But we're one of the things that I think you and I do really, really well together that's helped immensely is, well, we can figure this out.
Totally. Yeah. I had zero experience with podcasts or recording or doing anything, editing sound files. I still don't really know what I'm doing, but we're figuring it out.
And the thing that I do know how to do is talk to people. Yeah. So we had that covered. We knew Erin could talk to people. And after freaking out over the technology, I think what I really appreciated is you called your brother. You called your brother.
Big brother in for the rescue.
We called your big brother, who has a podcast in the weirdest niche. It's like,
they talk about kind of nerd culture and rum drinking. I mean, it's super.
It's a little nichey. It's a little nichey.
They have a blast, and he knows what he's doing. So he was. But
he's also his job. He's a mechanical engineer. What is his crazy ass job?
Yeah, he's an architectural engineer.
So he's a smart person who knows how to figure things out.
Yeah.
And he spent some time with you and I on Zoom.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, he's the one who said, don't make it hard.
Yes.
Don't make it hard. And so we stopped making it hard. And I absolutely love the fact that we've done now 100 episodes of a podcast, recording on Zoom. I currently today forgot to plug in my microphone, and I don't even have my ring light on. So yay me. Don't make it hard. Make it interesting, but not hard.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're rounding the corner to 5,000 downloads and, tons of views, great feedback. And, we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants, figuring it out as we go. And it doesn't have to be top notch, studio quality. You just got to dive in and do it. And
just got to dive in and do it. And that and so one of the things, the theory behind the podcast, the whole premise of it is you'll never do what it takes until you become the person it takes to do it. Stories from entrepreneurs about what did they learn about who they had to be in order to get where they are. And when you talk about we figure it out, I think one of the things that we do well together is that we're brave about our undertaking, right? And you can't be brave about what you'll try to do if you're scared of failure.
Right.
We kind of just assume failure.
I mean, I think it's a reason that you and I get along so well and work well together is that we're kind of like, well, if it fails, it fails. Let's try it.
Let's see what we can rate. I mean,
let's try it.
There's no way that everything's going to be 100%. There's just no way. It's not statistically possible. So if a quarter of what you try works, all right. Okay. I mean, that's what we're working with. So it just means we got to try more things. But that fearless brave, when we look back at okay, so what have we learned through 100 episodes and what's got, we've done some training ones, but what's got to be a good 85, 90 interviews. What have we learned are the traits that help you become the person it takes to do the thing, right? And that fearless, brave, don't be afraid to fail. I'll go a step further, embrace the failure.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Learn from it. As you always say, it's feedback. It's not failure. And I say that to so many people because, whether they're new to being a business owner or just something non-business related, they let any sort of failure kind of knock them down. I'm like, don't learn from it.
Well, and honestly, I think for me, where some of that came from is the corporate job that we had together, because my mentor, Tom Sr., who, his whole thing was, well, let's try it. You didn't get hit over the head for making a mistake.
Right.
And you have to have an environment. I still laugh within the first few weeks of you joining me. And I forgot it was something that got messed up on the calendar. And at one point you're like, am I even helping you at this point? Like, am I providing any value whatsoever?
Why am I here?
And it wasn't coming from a place of fear. Erin's going to be mad at me. There was none of that. It was like, yeah, I'm doing this all wrong. Is it even helping you at this point?
I mean, isn't that a weekly conversation between the two of us where we're like, oh man, well, that wasn't supposed to happen. Sorry.
Do that right. That's not how that works. Great. And the more you can realize you're not going to die, the more you can realize what's the worst that can happen. Well, the worst that can happen is nobody buys the thing when we have that launch. Well, we've had that happen. The worst that can happen is nobody wants to listen to our webinar. We've totally had that happen. And yet you learn so much from it. You make it better the next time. So that brave,
Absolutely.
Fearless piece is so important. Otherwise, you're paralyzed.
Yes. And I think that's a huge trend with most of the people that you interview. It's, they run up to this, oh my God, what is going to happen situation. And you got to just power through it. And
you just keep going.
Yeah. It usually works out.
And so you said the perfect thing, because I think the next trait that we've discovered is the persistence about it.
Yeah.
So not just brave, but brave over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
Again.
Absolutely.
The persistence. Can you keep trying even when it doesn't work?
Yeah, exactly. And, you learn from what doesn't work and you keep going. And maybe the second thing doesn't work. Guess what? You're going to learn something else,
Yeah, exactly. Which truthfully then becomes the third thing we've learned. Resilient. You know, if you're, it all goes together, because the things don't work, the things are scary. And are you resilient enough for that to happen and not knock you down? And I think resilience is something you build up. Like the stuff that might used to knock me down for a month, then a week, then well, hell, that didn't work. Now what? Right? You get better at the resilience.
Absolutely. Yep.
You get better and better at the resilience. So what else would you say? The open coachable piece. What do they say? The two most dangerous words in the English language are, I know.
Yeah.
Open and coachable. Open and coachable. There's a big difference between open and coachable and subjecting yourself to trying to please everybody, right? You can't react to every comment you get. You have to have your boundaries and trust yourself. But at the same time, are you open and coachable to learning something new, doing it a better way? Or I'll go on, not just from a tactical side, but one of the things I know that has worked really well for me and how far I've been able to come in the last couple of years is embracing this idea that success is tied to how much truth you can hear about yourself without running away.
Yeah, for sure.
Because that's horrifying.
And I think that's something, anyone who's had any bit of coaching, you kind of get hit over the head with that a little bit, where you're like, this is why I do the things I do and why what happens keeps happening.
Yeah. Over and yeah. When you're going to be persistent, that's not the place to be persistent, right?
Yes.
Learn the lesson, change the pattern, but don't be persistent with the problem, right? But that open to being coachable, open to accepting that maybe you don't know everything, that your way is not perfect, but open to learning something about yourself you might not like or be sad about, even if it's not something you like, you dislike, but something you might be sad about in your past, and realizing that if you can't face it, it will continue to just knock you down. And look, one of the things that comes up with all of this, and I'm trying to think, I don't think there's been an exception to it. In every interview that I've asked, and I haven't asked it in every interview, but I've asked it in most interviews, but every single time I've asked somebody, tell me what hasn't worked. How can we help people's learning curves, shorten their learning curve by giving them an example of a failure, by giving an example of what didn't work? Every single one of them laughs and says, oh my God, it's too much to eat. Like, which one?
Yeah.
Nobody gets upset, right?
They're like, oh, I wasn't expecting that question, but it's such an important one. It really is. Well,
and then they don't take themselves too seriously when they reflect on all of their failures.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody gets offended. Nobody shies away from it. They're actually more excited to talk about that than anything. Oh, let me tell you about this one time, right?
Yeah.
And so that mixture of a sense of humor about yourself, that fine line between taking what you're doing for others seriously, but not taking yourself too seriously, that all ties in there.
I think it helps a lot of people who might be in the midst of the really hard time to hear other people talking about their really hard times and how, looking at it in the rearview mirror, hey, it really wasn't that bad, well, and I learned all this from it.
And so two things about that. Number one, that's one of the things that I think we have learned to try to do on purpose. What can we learn? Like what can we approach? What failure can we approach with gratitude over what we've learned instead of getting upset by it? And that takes practice. But the other thing about the failures, there's the gurus out there. There's the success gurus out there. And what happens though, is they're so far ahead of the rest of us, the Gary V's, the Tony Robbins, they're so far ahead of the rest of us that you start to feel like you can't relate to them. So their story might be inspiring, but not necessarily motivating.
Or attainable. Yeah.
And you think, well, I can't do that thing. I'm not Gary Vee. It won't work for me. He's him, I'm me. So there's this big old gap, this big old separation. And one of the reasons I love sharing the failures so much is that the people that I talk to, it's kind of more like, to a fourth grader, a fifth grader is really cool, right? It's closer. The gap is closer.
Yeah.
So you might feel more relatable. It might feel like a more relatable story.
For sure.
So what else? Like, what are some of your favorite situations from the interviews?
That's tough. I mean, as someone who has listened to every single episode
several times.
Yeah, multiple times. No, I mean, I just love the willingness to share the good and the bad, and just, kind of the dirty of being an entrepreneur. And hey, sometimes, especially solopreneurs out there, they feel really alone. Like, no one's ever done this before. You're blazing your own trail, which might be the case, but someone has done something similar, and there's always other people out there who can help you, if you're feeling like, oh my God, what am I doing?
And I think one of the things the interviews and doing all these episodes have done for me. So when I left corporate and I had Carrying Transitions, the first small business I owned, I thought it was going to be really, really hard to hire employees because it was a part-time job and it didn't have a set schedule. And I didn't realize, because it wasn't my world, I come out of corporate, I didn't realize that there is this whole economy of people who prefer to work part-time and really don't care if it's a set schedule. They like having 2 or 3 jobs that they can mix and match, and it keeps life interesting for them. And the next version of that for me has been doing the podcast, because while I do network, it's a different situation than when I'm interviewing people. And I think it's just been amazing, again, not having a background in it, coming out of Chicago public schools and then corporate, that entrepreneurship is not a small number of people, right? There are so many people with so many stories, and that when you're in corporate, you think that's how the world works. And I think there might be more small business owners and entrepreneurs than there are big corporations.
Now that we're in that world, yeah.
Right? Now that we're in that world, I see it everywhere.
For sure.
And that was really cool to realize, wow, it's not what we think our view of the world is only because of what we're surrounded by. And if you change your surroundings, your entire view of the world changes.
Totally.
And which leads me to like that last trait that I really appreciate is how many inspired, passionate people are out there. Like
so many. Yeah. And, a lot of the people that you interview, right off the bat, you're like, tell us who you are and what you do. So many people that you've interviewed, they tell what they do for a living. And I'm like, that's a thing. Like, I had no idea.
So cool, right?
But they're like so invested and so into it. And then I'm like, God, how have I not heard about this? And it's so interesting. And the passion they have for it just blows my mind.
And it's like, and it's interesting having not had a job for a long time. And at this point in my life, feeling I am now completely unemployable. I couldn't handle it. There'd be no way. And I was like really good at my job. I had a great corporate career, right? And I would lose my mind in that environment at this point. But if you look at social media, if you go on BuzzFeed, if you look at Reddit, it's even on Facebook, there's all these horrible boss threads. There's all these horrible employee stories. And nothing could be further from my world.
Right. Yeah.
Nothing could be further from my world. working for the weekend, hump day Wednesday, hate Mondays, and nothing could be further from my world. Not just me, but any of the people I've interviewed and any of the people I network with. And it doesn't mean every day is easy, and it doesn't mean any of it's easy. But none of them hate what they do.
Right. Yeah.
And they're choosing to do what they do because they have an interest in what it is that they do and how they can help people doing it. And it's I talk about what I do in Conquer Your Business. The thing that I focus on is helping entrepreneurs and small business owners get the financial and emotional freedom that they need in order to build a business and a life they're proud of. And thinking about all these people who just have zero affect from hating my job, being treated poorly, the money's great, but the emotional freedom that comes with knowing that you're in charge of you is just, that's it. I mean,
absolutely.
That is it.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, I think for me, that's been my favorite part. For the people I talk to, that's what I'm most impressed by with everybody. And like you said, what everybody is just creating, not because of what they're supposed to do, but because of what they want to do, what they're inspired to do, what they're able to do.
It's that passion project. It comes from the heart, and you are all in. Whatever, even if it's that tiny little weird niche job that no one's ever heard of, you are all in, and somebody wants to work with you.
And somebody is waiting for your message. And so one of my mentors, and I absolutely love this. One of my mentors, someone I highly, highly, highly respect and love dearly, talks about passion is not, you should not be running your business with passion. But it's an uncontrolled emotion. Passion, the definition of passion is an uncontrolled emotion. And I absolutely agree. You should not be making business decisions with uncontrolled emotion. But if there is not a spark of passion behind what you're doing, you're not going to be able to do the things we talked about. If there's not that spark of inspired passion laying underneath everything, you're not going to be brave. You're not going to be fearless. You're not going to be persistent. You're not going to be resilient without that piece.
Yeah. If you don't have that spark, then when the really hard times hit, you might just be like, well, bye.
Tried, done, get me out of here. Absolutely. So I want to officially and massively publicly thank you for being the support behind my harebrained schemes, because we know there'd be no way this stuff would actually happen on a regular basis with consistent deliverables. Without awesome. What you're adding, like the willingness to figure it out is key. And so seriously, thank you for the role, because not everybody does. I don't think people realize. I just don't imagine, right? Your personality is very organized, right? Methodical, responsible. And here's me going, hey, let's do this big giant project with a thing we don't know how to do that has to be delivered on a regularly timed schedule. And let's launch it with 7 episodes all at once so we look like we have something to say. Oh, and you know what else? Let's do 2 a week until we build up a library.
That 2 a week, man, that was a lot. I'm glad we're back to 1.
I'm very happy when that ended. But yeah, I mean, that willingness. Yeah. And I think that's, yes, you work in my company, but you have your own businesses as well. You have the entrepreneurial side to you. That willingness to, the bottom line is just say yes, right?
Yeah.
The bottom line is say yes with the confidence and trust in yourself that we are grown-ass people and things are figure outable.
Outable. Yeah.
Some things more than others are figure outable. Some things are figure outable and still don't work, but hey, right? And that's where the magic happens, right?
For sure.
That's when you find yourself having 100 episodes and almost 5,000 downloads, and the people that we've gotten to meet through the process. That's where it all happens.
Well, and if we're giving thank yous, thank you for being such a badass. I mean, I obviously love working with you. And, you know, if you were doing a podcast on like how to plant a garden, I would have pieced out a long time ago, but you know, the content is awesome. You interview amazing people and I get something out of every week.
I was going to say, I think you get to live your more cautious approach to life grounds me, and you get to live a little vicariously through the crazy random, like
it's a good, we're a good balance for each other.
Awesome. So thank you to everyone who has listened, who has joined me for an episode, who has left us feedback, who has shared our podcast, who has taught us how to do a thing so that we can have the podcast.
Right.
Seriously, I mean, it's just been, I don't even understand how we got here. Like, I seriously don't even understand how I got here, but I am unbelievably grateful for it. And I'm unbelievably excited about it. And I know what we have coming. And I know,
stay tuned,
that it's so much freaking fun. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.